Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the principles of effective use of instructional technology. A lot of people are looking to find ways to make learning easier but more engaging for students in a digital age. How do we make that happen? And most of the time we're turning to technology as a means of getting information across and trying to make content come to life. I want to make sure that we don't get too hung up on technology, even though you'd think that'd be kind of odd to say that in such a presentation. But I want us to think about just instructional tools. The fact that this is technology, that this is digital, that this is screens and touch and things like that is really irrelevant at this point. Because when you're starting off, you need to think about what it is you're trying to accomplish. And you shouldn't be trying to accomplish using the most tools possible, the most technology as you can, because sometimes it's not necessary. So I want to start with a quote here. And it's, as to methods, there may be a million and then some, but principles are few. The man who grasps principles can successfully select his own methods. The man who tries methods ignoring principles is sure to have trouble. Too often when people are embarking on a technology adoption or a plan to use it in the classroom, they are too focused on this. They're too focused on the methods. They're too focused on trying to see how they can use the computers or the iPads or the video cameras in class. And they're ignoring the purpose. They're ignoring why they're using it. If it's possible to accomplish an objective, a learning objective with pencil and paper, and that's the easiest way to do it, then use that. Don't worry about getting the smart board fired up and doing all that if you're just going to be doing simple math problems on the board. Chalk and chalkboard or whiteboard and dry erase markers is plenty sufficient for that. So let's keep in mind that we want to focus on the objective or the mission. The odd thing is, this was Ralph Waldo Emerson's quote, and you don't typically think of Emerson as someone that would have a lot of connection with technology or educational technology, since he was a rather simple guy. So moving ahead then, we're all here because we want to know, how do I get started? What do I do to make my course better? And again, we are talking in terms of technology today, but you got to first start with what it is that you're trying to improve and how it can be improved. And if you've decided that technology is a way of doing so, then we can go from there. Things to consider when you're considering a technology implementation or a technology plan. The first thing, technology provides instructors with additional tools to improve teaching and learning. I touched on that just a bit ago about the fact that keeping in mind that this is just another bag of tools, another bag of tricks. And we've all got our forte, our specialties. We all have our stories, our certain analogies, our certain activities that we feel work well. This is just another closet of resources, or another closet of equipment or tools that you can have at your disposal. But it doesn't mean that you always have to go to this closet in order to do what you're. Okay. Think about what the options were before when we go to that closet in the classroom or down the hall, the supply room. Classes were very teacher-centered, very just regimented, sit in seats, sit in rows, listen, and you see lectures, probably the largest word there. Take notes, bring your notebook, textbook, memorize things. And the way we did this was we had everybody sit down and be quiet, listen to what I have to say, and make sure you write down everything. Go home and memorize it, come back in, you're going to take an exam, and that'll determine whether you understand it or not. When a lot of the things that we were teaching and talking about were actually hands-on activities, that quite frankly, it's more important that you're able to do that than it is to sit down and take a written test to determine whether you have an understanding or not. Today our closet is expanded. It's the access to the tools and the resources that we have is just growing at an unimaginable pace. Every day there's more options, there's more tools, there's more ways of doing things more efficiently. It's impossible to know all of them. So you've got to focus, and that's where you would talk with an instructional designer, or you would speak with someone, a technology specialist, if that's the direction you want to go, to find out what is the most appropriate tool or app or software or hardware to accomplish your goal. But again, remember, we don't start with the technology. We don't say, I want to use iPads, now what do I do with them? It's the worst thing you can do. So knowing that these tools are out there is important, but there's so many that no one can know them all. So it's important to go to a specialist to get it narrowed down and to get some ideas about what things will match what you're trying to accomplish. Use technology to facilitate activities that require its use. Don't use it for the sake of using it. I used that example just a few moments ago. In an elementary or primary school classroom, if we're just doing mathematic problems, simple arithmetic or addition, subtraction, whichever, at the board, a chalkboard's fine. A whiteboard with dry erase markers is fine. You don't need to have tablets, and you don't need to have whiteboards, smart boards, and things like that. It's not necessary. So use technology when it's appropriate, whether that be for group activity, for collaboration, to help doing video projects, things like that that are going to make an impact on learning. That's when it's appropriate to use, but not just for the sake of using. Just trying to illustrate the example there. On the left, you see the 1 + 1 is 2. Worked out pretty well. We didn't need the math computer, the math machine to figure out simple things like that. Effective technology integration facilitates learning activities that would be more difficult or impossible without it. I've got two examples here. I've got people with hands up on the right, and I've got the clickers, the student response clickers or system on the left. And you might look at this and you'd say, what's wrong with everybody's got their hand up? They must love what I'm teaching. They must all want to share. They all know. That could very well be the case. But generally in that setting on the right, with all the hands up, what are you going to do? Exactly. You're going to pick somebody, maybe the person who makes the most noise, maybe it's the person who knows why you choose who you do, but you're probably going to choose a student to answer or give you a response until you get the right answer. So if the first person has the answer correct, you see there's going to be about 14 other hands that all go down and they never got a chance to be heard. You're not going to know what their misunderstandings are. Some of them may think they were right. Some of them may have been right. Some of them may have been wrong, and they won't know why, because the typical response in the setting on the right, over here, is, Johnny, what's you got? Yep, that's right. That's the right answer. Okay, let's move on. We don't take time to find out what all the other students in the back thought, what their answer may have been, why their answer could also be right. At that point, they know that theirs was wrong according to what you accepted as correct, and there's no more discussion. Now let's look at the one here on the left. The student response clickers. Everybody gets a vote. Everybody gets a say. Everybody gets to answer. Depending on how you set these up with how anonymous the polling is or the answers are, or how identified the students are in that system, you can find out a lot about whether your students are learning or whether they're getting confused about concepts based on the answers that they give. And this is an excellent opportunity in the moment to reteach instead of waiting till after a quiz, waiting till after homework's been graded or after an exam to find out whether or not your students are really getting it or not. So the one here on the left is much more of a teachable moment than the one here on the right with the hands up. It should be done incrementally. If you're going to see, and if you go back and think about the slide with the tree with all the tools on it, and you think, some people get very overwhelmed by this and they think, oh my goodness, how am I ever going to be able to do all this? There's just so much out there, it's overwhelming. Don't let yourself be overwhelmed. Do it in doses. Find things that you feel you're most comfortable with and just do one thing. Talk with colleagues, talk with instructional designers, talk with your educational technology team. Do some research on your own, but find one thing to start off with. Maybe it's doing some type of a discussion board or some type of a blog or a wiki on that they read outside of class, that you initiate some discussion coming back to class the next day or the next session. You don't have to just go full-blown into videos and doing all these things at the same time. So initiate your plan incrementally. So the speed limit here is 2. You don't have to go 75 just to start off. The last thing is effective technology integration involves students. It's not just watching the student at the board using the tools. It's important to put them in the student's hands. The tools should also be as relevant to the task as possible. If you're learning how to use, let's just use a non-technology example. If this was a wood shop, well, the tools that you would want them to learn to use would be hammers, screwdrivers, saws, the actual tools that they'll use in the trade or in the field. It wouldn't make any sense to have them using mops and sponges and whatever. So you want the technology that's used to be appropriate and apply to the real world situation. In technology circles, if this is a statistics class, you're going to want to find some type of tools that statisticians use, software that statisticians use. It wouldn't make any sense to use something else that isn't going to apply later on. So it accomplishes kind of both things. You're getting the knowledge and the understanding of the content, but you're also doing so using the real life tools that you're going to use down the road. Here you see students involved in it looks like they're playing some type of game, which is fine. It's a flight simulator. If you see there on the screen. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with learning being fun and that gaming being incorporated in it, as long as there is an educational goal, an academic focus to what they're doing. Then it's much better to sit and learn how to, in this case, it looks like a flight simulator, as I mentioned. Certainly more appropriate than, we wouldn't want to put them in a plane. That'd be a pretty bad idea. A heck of a learning experience. But doing this with a textbook or reading a magazine or a pamphlet or an article about how to do this, you're going to bore the kids, bore the students to death. So gaming in this case, you see Gator there. He's having a good time. Looks like he landed the plane or he's getting ready to take off, one or the other. But these kids are all in. They're focused on what the task is, and whether they know it or not, they're learning. Think about it at dinner time when you hide the good stuff underneath the stuff that kids like to eat, and they don't realize it, but they're actually getting the good stuff along with what they want. So these are the four things that we'll talk about, or the 4 things that you should be concerned with when you're starting a plan. Now, many of you have heard of something called blended learning, and you say, well, what is that? It's an instructional model that includes an online component with face-to-face meetings. So this is not distance learning per se. This could be done anywhere. Your traditional settings, your face-to-face classrooms, and blended learning is not a new concept. It's been around forever. Think about back in our school days and older folks, you were probably assigned something to read when you went home. That's blended learning. It's taking what's going on in the classroom outside of the classroom. It's gained popularity now because of its ease. It's with so many technology tools and social media and ways to take the content outside of the classroom, watching videos, using LMSs like Blackboard, doing meetings like with DCO, things like that. It's really become much easier than it was and a lot more diverse. So you've got 3 components here. You've got face-to-face meetings, you've got an online resource, and then the interconnectivity. So you want to make sure that what you're doing face-to-face and what the online readings are about are making sense towards the lesson interconnectivity, this area right in here. Okay, if there's no connection, if this is about stats, and over here on the online resources, you're learning about, you're reading about trees and flowers. Well, this is going to get really confused. What does that have to do with what we're doing outside of class? And one of these two things is going to turn into busy work. It's going to seem pretty trivial. So here's a simple lesson plan. We'd start with a weekly reading assignment. Students will follow along here. Students prepare to discuss the content. So this is done outside of class, the reading assignment. They discuss it inside of class, and it takes away the time of doing the reading in class. You know, now you use your class time more wisely for more activity, more discussion. And then as a result of the discussion, the instructor gives more information. There's more understanding that occurs because of our discussions, and we end up with then an online discussion. We take what was already done in class, and now let's take it back outside of class again. And the learning continues. You know, here's the clock. We're not stuck just doing from 12 to 1. Now it's around the clock. You can access this, the stuff over here can be accessed at any time. If you have questions about this, I'm going to skip ahead a few slides here. Here at AFIT, we use Blackboard as our LMS. It's one of the more common LMSs, places that content's put, the assignments are submitted, and it's kind of the vehicle that we use to connect, especially with distance learning students, but it's also available to any resident students, any face-to-face teachers and students. Here's a list of things. I'm not going to go into Blackboard now. I think that that's probably enough for now.